Cheering at pro wrestling shows in Japan is back, and 2023 is already shaping up to be a big year in the history of pro res. That's why you should listen to the Emerald Flow Show. From the Royal Road to the Green Mat, Paul and Gerard take you into the world of All Japan Pro Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Noah. Not only do we analyze events, but we examine business, who is getting over, what angles are working or not. Occasionally, we take a look at other Japanese promotions like DDT and Zero One. So if you're looking for more coverage of the world of Japanese wrestling, check out the Emerald Flow Show on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, available on all of your favorite podcast apps.
Hello there, everybody. It's me, Garrett Kidney, the co-host of You've Got to Be Kidding Me on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
And I am Liam Jones, my full name, and I'm also a part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network as a co-host for You've Got to Be Kidding Me.
We are a TNA history podcast that covers TNA 1 month at a time. We cover all the drama, all the matches, all the Vince Russo nonsense you could ever want in your life.
Have you heard of TNA? I bet you have, but would it be funnier if two people made jokes over it the whole time? Probably.
So if that sounds like fun to you, check it out on this very Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network, and Liam will do bits and whatnot.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a very special episode here today. Not only is it myself and Fred Moreland, but we have joining us from the Super J Cast, Mr. Joel Abraham. And Joel, I'm going to start here because we got an interesting question from the Discord that I really want your opinion on, and it's from Evil Trident. What is the most outlandish 8-man match New Japan and AEW could put together that the people would want to turn off their TV? And I ask you this because I know that you will have an answer that'll just put me on the floor laughing.
Well, the easy answer would be House of Torture versus House of Black. But I think House of Black are maybe a little bit... I sort of like them too much for them to be instant turn-off. So,
also, AEW fans should be very used to interference at this point in time.
That's very true. Well, Joel, we are absolutely thrilled to have you on. How are things going for you? You are in Thailand, correct?
That is correct. For at least another month, then moving back to the UK. But yeah, it is 9 p.m. over here. I've got 2 sleeping children next to me, so this ideal situation for recording podcasts. But weirdly enough, the sound of me talking about pro wrestling seems to soothe them to sleep. So we're all good.
Oh, you hit a gold mine there, Joel. That is phenomenal, and we're really excited to talk to you about this interesting Forbidden Door card. Obviously, we've known the top 2 matches for some time, and this past week on Collision and Dynamite, they've given us quite a bit more. One thing that I'm curious about is after last year, the build was really wonky, and that wasn't necessarily the fault of Tony Khan and Gato. It was just everything bad decided to happen to them all at once. How did you feel about this year's build than compared to last year?
Oh, it's way better. It's way more coherent. I mean, last year was a snake bit show for all the reasons that you've mentioned. Yet, in spite of that, it was still a bloody fun show, and I really enjoyed watching it, in spite of myself, because I looked at that card, and to be honest, I was hand-waving it. I was like, this could be a disaster. But it wasn't. You know, the crowd was great. Everyone had the working boots on, and it had just a brilliant energy to it. So I'm expecting and hoping for the same, and we have a way better build this year. There's been some really good coherent storytelling between the two companies, which has surprised me, if I'm honest. So yeah, I'm really excited for it. I think it's going to be a killer show.
Fred, how about you? What is your take on the build? I know we've had some discussions on it here before.
It's nice to have a build that isn't ruined by external factors for once. I mean, I say for once, like there's been more than 2 of these. But, you know, it's been nice to actually watch a card get built in a meaningful way rather than just like on a weekly basis going, oh shit, who got hurt this week. And we only lost what would have been a Women's World Championship match of Mercedes Moné and probably Toni Storm, maybe Jamie Hayter if she wasn't injured. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty excited. I actually went right after the show last night, and I went ahead and purchased it, mainly because I do this show. But you know, it's good to avoid the whole BR Live can't handle more than 20 people trying to order at once deal. Yeah, I'm pretty excited. I'm looking forward to this, and I would not be shocked if it's the show of the year again.
Yeah, this is shaping up to be a great show, and I really liked what Joel said about the build being more coherent, because I think that's the perfect word for it. Everything just seems to be flowing nicely. They Tony Khan loves his announcements, so they kind of slow rolled some of these matches, and like 2 weeks ago we had Sonata and Hiroshi Tanahashi making challenges. Jungle Boy accepted that, and then MJF obviously whined like MJF does. And then this week we had more announcements, and then spoiler, Rampage has an announcement for another match, and I like that slow roll to continue the momentum while continuing to build up those top two matches. I think it's been really, really nice. I know I wonder, Joel, from your perspective, how this is kind of viewed by some of the New Japan fans out there, because New Japan is, I don't know what the right phrasing is, so I'm going to phrase it like this. They're notorious for just putting entire cards out there significant amount of time in advance, like whether it be like 2, 3, even like up to like 4 weeks. How do New Japan fans feel about kind of like the slow roll, or do they just like to have everything right away, or does it really not matter?
I think the top 2 matches for this show are so strong that the rest of the undercard is immaterial, really. People, I think New Japan fans and AEW fans are so excited by the prospect of Okada versus Danielson and Ospreay versus Omega 2 that the strength of that alone means they could fill up the undercard with anything. Like the multi-man tags were so good last year that even the New Japan fans are not hand-waving those. Like they know they're going to be really fun. I mean, weirdly, the complaints that I have seen is that there's too many singles matches on this card, whereas they would have been happy enough with those really 2 strong sort of main event and co-main event and some fun, wacky multi-man tag matches, crossovers that you never thought you'd see before. So, yeah, strangely enough, the only complaints I've heard are about things like Punk versus Kojima and Sonata versus Jungle Boy, where people weirdly, I think, would have rather have seen them in multi-man tag matches.
That's fascinating. And you know what? Let's jump right into the card, Joel. And let's start there with what you just mentioned, and that is the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship match, Sonata versus Jungle Boy. I find this match fascinating for a lot of levels. One, because they're 2 of the best-looking wrestlers out there today. And you obviously have all the jokes about the handsome battle. But you look at Jungle Boy and you look at Sonata, and it's not always a 1-to-1. Like, hey, you know, this guy's a junior and challenging for the heavyweight title. But Jungle Boy looks like a junior. He only weighs about 165 pounds. But obviously in America, he's presented in a different fashion. He isn't presented like he's a junior. He's presented like he's a standard heavyweight. How are you looking at this match in those terms, and then kind of in a much broader perspective, because it's a match that could easily be anywhere from like 3 stars to 4.5, just with how these 2 individuals work?
I think the match will be really good. I think both guys are going to be working very hard to impress people and prove the doubters wrong. But unfortunately, it was just one of these things where we knew from the start that whoever Sonata was paired against, it was going to be a match that on paper would have no interest to the AEW fans because they're not into Sonata, and no interest to the New Japan fans because they were never going to give him an opponent that the New Japan fans would be into just because of all the politics involved. And I mean, I've said to Damon on the Jcast that Forbidden Door was never about giving Sonata a dream match. And it's not really about dream IWGP heavyweight title defenses either. So I think it was quite smart for New Japan to move their world title away from people that they wanted the dream matches for and put it on Sonata. So it was immaterial, really, who he was going to be facing. Now, I can kind of understand where Jack Perry came from as a challenger. I know he's been challenging for the AEW world title fairly recently. he's not exactly a jobber or anything, but it was just really interesting to see Sanada's comments because he's leaning into these guys. So he said, I quote, "I have no knowledge of Jack Perry. It's sad to see someone like that challenge for the IWGP. Is it an open challenge really that easy to decide? It's the IWGP. I think it's worth more than the AEW Championship." So I do like that from Sanada, that he is, trying to make something out of this and leaning into some of the comments that I've seen from New Japan fans. Because, personally, my only gripe was that the way the match, the matchmaking played out on Dynamite, the fact that he threw out this open challenge and there was only one member of the AEW roster who expressed any interest in it. Like I said before, it would have been nice to have, I don't know, a qualifying match or a battle royal, or at least, two guys having an argument over it. You think Sanada saying, okay, I'm holding the top prize in New Japan, come and get it. And then just one dude going, okay, yeah, that sounds interesting, I'll give it a go. That was the only thing that I had a complaint about, because it made the IWGP title look weak. But like I said before, it's all politics. So I don't really have a problem with the match. It's not what I'm tuning into Forbidden Door to see. So the fact that he is getting a singles match and a title defense at that, I see that as a bonus, an unexpected bonus, because I thought we'd just get just 5 guys in a tag match.
Considering the state of the card, and we'll start with you, Joel, and then I want your opinion on this too, Fred. It looks like this IWGP title match is going to probably be 4th or 5th on the card, and potentially 3rd, depending on how the politics get slotted with the AEW World Title. Do you see that as a detriment and, for lack of a better term, a stain on the world title, because it is viewed with this such high prestige, but it being so low on the card? Obviously, this is kind of a weird instance with it being like a super show, but it's very rare that you ever see the IWGP World Championship defended below the top spot.
I don't have a problem with it. I've not seen any complaints about it. I don't think, even the most hardcore New Japan fan would have been demanding for Sanada to be in the main event of Forbidden Door. Like I said, the Forbidden Door is not about getting a sexy Sanada match. Ironic, really, considering both of the handsome chaps who are going to be contesting it. But no, I think it's fine. Everyone's tuning in because they want those 2 dream matches at the top. So zero complaints about wherever it's put. If it's 3rd, 4th, I don't care. I just want to see the cool matches at the top of the card.
Fred, how about you?
I agree with Joel in terms of, I think that they could have done this in a way that would have made the IWGP heavyweight title more prestigious. It did feel very much like Jack Perry just happened to be hanging out backstage. It was like, oh, what the hell? Rather than it being like a really desirable title, which it should be presented as. But ignoring that, and, it's such a trope in American wrestling that there'll be an open challenge and then, oh, surprise, just one guy comes out, even though it's, every lower card guy on the show should be clamoring for the opportunity. But I think I think it's exactly where it's going to be this year. I think in a future year, if Okada comes into the show, the Forbidden Door 3 as the champ, it'll be placed much higher on the card. But in terms of the reality of Sanada as the world champ right now, and the fact that he's not particularly super over in the States, I actually think Ishii and Suzuki would be more over, and will be more over on the show than Sanada. But if you ignore all that, it's exactly where it probably should be. It could even open the show, I reckon, just to give a kind of a featured slot. But it'll be a 20-minute match tops, and it'll be pretty darn good. So
that's kind of where I am too. I like that Jungle Boy was the one who accepted the open challenge. Obviously, they're sexier opponents. They're better opponents than Jungle Boy. But his story this year being that he's trying so hard to win a singles title of some form. Mm-hmm. He's already gone for the TNT. He's already gone for, I believe he went for the international early in the Orange Cassidy reign. And then he just went for the World Heavyweight title. Going for the IWGP makes sense within the context of what his story is this year. And I like that continuity. I mean, he's not going to win. The only way that he'd win is if Tanahashi were to beat MJF. And I don't see those two things happening. Yeah. I think,
and frankly, Perry losing here is going to be an important part of the story that they're telling with him, I think.
I agree completely. I think it'd be awesome to have Tanahashi with a run with the AEW World Title, but Jungle Boy as an IWGP champion makes absolutely zero sense. So you can't even have that kind of like trade off. You'd have to have somebody much bigger. Like if Moxley was challenging for the IWGP, then maybe you can make a switch like that. But that's never going to happen. That's kind of all happenstance, and I find that interesting. And Joel brings up a good point in our chat that Sonata is barely promoted for the NJPW Strong US events. And yeah, I think it was the last Capital Collision. He was like 4th from the top in a tag match. Like that's a really good point. And I know he's much more over with the Japanese fans than he is with the Western fans, but that's a significant drop off, especially as New Japan is trying to be more consistent about running shows in America.
I think there's like a tacit admission there, acknowledgement by New Japan that there is a disconnect between the way Sonata is perceived in Japan and perceived in the States. So, like I said, I don't think there's any complaints either side. I think it is what it is with Sonata at this point. He's got his fans. I think he's probably doing a little better than people are giving him credit for, but nobody is demanding for him to be at the top of all the stuff that they do stateside. It's just not realistic.
That does bring me to a question I want to ask you, Joel, because one thing that I know Joe Lanza really, believes in is that Sonata is a flop as the world champion for New Japan right now, that he's not getting over. And I did just watch, before we went on air, I just finished his defense against Yota Tsuji, and the crowd was 100% behind Tsuji in that match. So do you think Sonata is succeeding as the world champion for New Japan, or do you think that there's still kind of a struggle to establish him as a top of the card guy?
He's just been positioned in an interesting way, in as much as like when he was the challenger, I think the fans are really into him. The run that he had in the New Japan Cup, like you watch the final he had against Finlay, or you watch the title challenge against Okada, the fans were behind him. They were making noise for him. But the defenses he's had have been against Hiromu, who is like this ultra popular, like transcendental junior star that everyone loves, and Yota Tsuji, who is this incredibly exciting and dynamic young lion making his comeback and is already exuding star power. So I think those are mitigating circumstances. I wouldn't call him a flop, but again, I acknowledge that the crowd are not as into him as they are with guys, at the very top of the card, your Okadas or your Naitos or your Hiromus. That's a fact, no one's out here saying that he's getting megastar reactions, but I think it's been overblown. I think the numbers he's doing are fine. I mean, they sold out Dontaku. I thought that it's really hard to judge the crowd numbers just because post-pandemic, there's still a lot of reluctance from Japanese people to go to live events in general. So I don't think it's fair to compare the numbers now to how they were pre-pandemic. It's just a completely different landscape. So I don't think he's a flop, but I also acknowledge that he is nowhere near as popular as the upper echelons of stars in the company. It's an experiment. They're using him as a transitional champion, giving him the rub. I don't think he's going to be he's not going to be doing like an Okada mega reign with it. He's not going to be breaking any title defense records, but it's going to give him a bit of shine and give Just Five Guys a bit of shine. So if that is the mission statement for this Sonata title run, I think it's doing what it was set out to do from the start.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Sonata's been actually really good this year. I think I have him in my top 15 in my Wrestler of the Year tracker I'm doing because I'm a giant nerd. But like every match he's had has been at least 4.25 stars that I've gone out of my way to watch. But I am a New Japan filthy casual. So like I'm not as into it as you are. I try to keep up with it. I haven't watched any of the Best of the Super Junior, but I am almost done with Dominion at this point. I'm very timely. But yeah, I do think it's very interesting the way New Japan's booked him, because it feels like they've almost done a disservice to him. Like they gave him the belt to try to help establish him as a top star, kind of like they did with Evil a couple years ago. But then they immediately book him against two guys that were pretty obviously going to be like strong underdog contenders against him that the crowd will get behind. I would have thought it was obvious that both Hiromu and Tsuji would have been favorites, and I'm surprised they leaned into that they booked those two matches. And I feel like it hamstrung Sonata a little bit. I don't know what the long-term effects will be, if any, but it's just very interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, you can extend that to see the booking for the G1 block that he's in, because like he's been given this interesting spot where he's been paired up against a lot of these young up and comers, and he's like the veteran hand who's got to guide them through the matches. So you look at that block, and you see he's going to be facing Tsuji again, guys like Kiyomiya, Ren Narita, Shota Umino, even people like Gabe Kidd. You know, these are the young, hungry up and comers that, again, I think the crowds are going to be hungry for the upsets there. So yet again, in this block, Sonata's going to have his back to the wall. So I don't think it's an accident. I think there's an intentionality to the way he's being booked.
It's very interesting to me. I wouldn't do it that way, but hey, it's an interesting move.
At 100% is. Joel, before we move on, I there's a question I've wanted to ask you, because I know I am also a big crisp fan. If you had to relate Sonata to a flavor of crisp, what would you do?
Probably ready salted. You know, he's a safe pick. People who say that that's their favorite are probably a bit boring and not to be trusted. But I would never turn down. If there's a bowl of ready salted crisp there, I'll have a few, sure, but I'm never going to lie and say it's my favorite.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with a good salty crisp. I would completely agree. Let's continue on. Let's briefly mention the one pre-show match here, and then I want to kind of get into a little bit of a hypothetical. We have the Owen Hart Memorial Tournament starting it's actually starting on Rampage Friday night with Anna JAS versus Sky Blue. And then the pre-show, Billy Starks versus Athena, which is a very interesting match in itself that we don't have to get really too far into. I don't think we've seen Billy Starks wrestle in AEW yet.
Yeah, we did
a couple dark matches.
Was that a dark match? I think she was on a Rampage I was at, but no, I guess I'm mistaken. So never mind me.
Well, I mean, she could have just been wrestling on dark, but
yeah,
that is the one pre-show match, and I'm really intrigued to see what else is added to this pre-show, because I believe LIJ is coming in. We know Dookie getting the singles rub against Jungle Boy on Rampage, and according to a Lucha Blog friend of the site, he got a much bigger reaction and crowd connection than Jungle Boy did, which rules so much. I love Dookie. I'm curious, like what you guys might think who is going to be on this pre-show, because you'd have to assume that LIJ is probably on here at some way, shape, or form, because it's LIJ. The lack of Bullet Club inclusion is very interesting, considering their popularity in the States as a whole. But last year there were 4 pre-show matches, and I'm curious what else might be added here. And I wondered if you guys had any thoughts on that.
My big fear is that it's going to be like the last 2 pre-shows, which have been like dollar store WWE versions, where you get one match and then like 40 minutes of meaningless bullshit from like a panel of Tall Paul and Stokely Hathaway and just like nothing, because I guess it wasn't Forbidden Door last year. I mean, though I liked the Forbidden Door pre-show last year, but last year we got what was it, Kingston and Ishii, I think, on one of the pre-shows, which was a 5-star match for me. And then this year we're like, hey, do you like the Guns? And it's just like, what are we doing, man? I don't. If this, like I said on the last pay-per-view recap, if this is shown to actually work better than the good pre-shows, then capitalism has failed.
Yeah, capitalism has failed. That's going to be the title of a show one of these days, Fred. Joel, obviously, this pre-show is going to be interesting. I'm going to push back a little bit, Fred. I don't think it's going to be a WWE style pre-show.
I hope not.
Not only, you're catering to also the Japanese fan base, and that's not kind of the style. Like it's match. It's much more of a sports format, and I think having 40 minutes of a pre-show is not going to convince, it's not going to convince anybody who's a really big fan of that promotion to want to buy tickets buy the pay-per-view. Joel, do you have any thoughts on who might be added to this pre-show? And I really want your thoughts on this lack of Bullet Club inclusion.
That's a weird one because I guess if you have the Bullet Club on there, then there's a bit of an elephant in the room with the black and gold Bullet Club or whatever they're calling themselves these days. And that sort of sticks out like a sore thumb, the fact that there's nothing for Jay White on this card. Because you think that given his history and everything, the acrimonious way in kayfabe, he was booted out of New Japan, that he would figure quite prominently into a Forbidden Door event, but there's nothing there. I mean, I think it would be cool to have maybe on the pre-show or the undercards some sort of multi-man where we get Finlay and Connors and Dan Maloney and Ged Kidd and Alex Coughlin against, I don't know, some equivalent team that's like an AEW team of jobbers that they can beat, because I don't think New Japan would want their Bullet Club taking a loss. So I don't know if there's a group of AEW guys that they could get a win over. I don't think there's anything announced for Bishamon yet, so maybe Goto and Yoshihashi could make an appearance at some point. I could see a multi-man team, like Just Five Guys team of like Kanemaru and Doki or whoever. They could probably be staring at the lights for someone. So there's a few options out there.
Yeah, this pre-show is I really don't think it's over, because Athena versus Billy Starks does not scream, "Hey, let's buy this pay-per-view" to me. Let's continue on. We have a lot to talk about here with this show. This one's interesting, and we had a little bit of forward here. We're gonna get Chris Jericho and Sting in the ring wrestling each other for the first time ever, which, considering all their crossover, and I use air quotes there, on WCW, they've never faced off in the ring, which is fascinating to me. Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, and Minoru Suzuki, who this hired gun thing by Jericho and Suzuki, it just feels like they're just pals having a blast. I love watching those two wrestle together in the ring, versus Sting, Darby Allin, and a mystery opponent. And I think the conductive reasoning has decided that it's going to be Tetsuya Naito, especially with Sting saying like it's an enemy of his that he's made in New Japan in the promo this week on Dynamite. But this match, especially with what we saw from Sting last year in the trios match with the Young Bucks and El Phantasmo, like this could end up being a lot of fun. And I'm very excited. But if it's not Naito, who could it be? And I think that's another interesting discussion because of the lack of LIJ inclusion just as a whole on the show so far. Joel, what are your thoughts here on this match, and how excited are you to see Sting in a ring again?
Yeah, these are the kind of matches that I'm here for Forbidden Door. The one that you mentioned last year, what was it? Darby Allin, Sting, and Shingo against ELP and the Bucks. That was great, and no one was circling that one thinking, "Oh yeah, this is going to be a killer match." But it was just so much fun, and all those neat little interactions that you never thought you'd see. I mean, in terms of the mystery partner, I'm 99% sure it is Naito, so I wouldn't sort of go overthinking that one. Shingo was tweeting about it, but yeah, I think Naito's the play. He's got history with Suzuki, he's got history with Jericho, so hopefully that will be a cool pop when he gets announced for that one. And yeah, it should be a really fun match. Like, this is, I think, the spirit of Forbidden Door, where you get these kind of mishmash teams, not necessarily a New Japan team against an AEW team, but when you're mixing them up and you've got your good guys on one side, your bad guys on the other, that's what everyone's here for. It's a fun time.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued if Naito ends up on this team. Does Naito paint his face? And I think to me that's the fun element that I'm waiting to see.
There's no way, right? Like, he's too tranquilo to do that, right?
You would think, but who knows, man? Sting has some magical powers, and I don't mean that in reality. It's just Sting. He's got an aura.
I did pop for Brian Cage being face painted, despite being against Sting in a match. Like, what was it, last week or the week before? I love that Brian Cage could not control his markedness for Sting to the point that he was like, well, I'm going to try to beat him up, but I'm also going to do the face paint because he rules.
Yeah. One last thing here, Joel. Do you think there's any chance that he does the face paint, or am I just trying to fantasy book myself to oblivion?
I can't see it. It would seem antithetical to the spirit of Naito, where most of the time he doesn't give a fuck. So I think we'll be lucky if he takes his t-shirt off. So don't hold your breath in face paint.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Let's continue on. That's probably going to be that's a contender for match of the night outside of the top two, because I think those two are going to be so unworldly that it's going to be hard to compare anything else on the card to them. The 10-man tag, you have the Blackpool Combat Club with Konosuke Takeshita and Shooter versus the Hung Bucks, Eddie Kingston and Tomohiro Ishii. And this was set up really nicely on Dynamite this past week. A little disjointed. Eddie Kingston basically saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. But then he goes and says that he doesn't respect the Elite, and it's just a weird fit. And then Ishii gets his appearance on these shows, and the United States fans love Tomohiro Ishii. And it's going to be interesting how the dynamics of this whole match work, because you have the dynamics with Kingston and John Moxley, Kingston and Claudio Castagnoli. Ishii's got history with John Moxley. And then Shooter is on the heel team, and he's going to be dressed up like a Hiroshi Tanahashi cosplay. So how the dynamics of this match really shape out are fascinating to me. Fred, I'll start with you here. How do you think this match goes down? And I'm guessing that this is probably going to set up some form of blood and guts.
Yeah, I would imagine. I think it's going to be a big old cluster, intentionally and in a good way. But yeah, I mean, I don't think this is exactly going to be, clean wrestling. I think there's going to be a lot of brawling, a lot of chaos. I think that the Kingston setting up the match being disjointed is just what you get when it's Kingston. I would not have been shocked at all if he came out and said, "Hey, yo, I'm going to do me." And you know who else does them? Master Watto. Or just, something like Doki. It's just entirely within the realm for Kingston. But, his entire kayfabe motivation is just hating Claudio Castagnoli a whole lot. Like, way too much. And, he sees an opportunity to fight Claudio, and so he will be here to fight Claudio. I did think that it was kind of... I would have liked to have seen Ishii get a little shine after he was announced instead of immediately being mauled to death by BCC. It would have been nice to have Yuta bump around for him a little bit and then have Danielson sneak in and take out his knee or something like that. But, I think this match will rock. It'll probably be a big vibes match, not because of a lack of talent in the ring, because the ring is absolutely packed, but I think that this is going to be a really heated match. You got Takeshita, you got Don Callis, the greatest heel in history as of right now. I don't know. This looks very intriguing to me. It looks very exciting.
Joel, how are you feeling about this? This is it's got a decent amount of crossover with New Japan, but this is obviously continuing the Elite versus the Blackpool Combat Club story. My main thought here is I kind of want your opinion on Shooter, because he's a very interesting character, especially with his interactions with John Moxley, because it's almost like he's like the whole wrestler cosplay where he's just playing pro wrestler. And I think it really shows up in a lot of these moments, but it also kind of exposes another element for him where he becomes a little bit of a badass, where he shows a little bit more fire when he's with Moxley. What are your overall thoughts on kind of how this will play out?
I think AEW are really good at laying out these multi-man matches. So I'm expecting this one to be a lot of fun. And they're usually structured in a way where it's sort of built to give shine to one or two particular wrestlers. Like, it's not going to be every single wrestler gets the exact same amount of time. So I'm curious as to, last year, the match that Shota was in, that was, again, structured really well to give him the spotlight and give him some shine. So I'm curious to see whether they do that again, or if it's going to be someone else like Takeshita. I don't know who else it could be. I'm looking like maybe Wheeler Yuta. Presumably you want to use this as a vehicle to give some shine to one of the younger guys in the match. So it could be Shooter again. But I think Shooter is at his best when he's got his back to the wall and he's basically getting the shit kicked out of him by someone else. And I think he's really started to shine as he's been embroiled in this kind of cold feud with Okada. I say cold in as much as they haven't faced each other in a singles match and they're not in the same G1 block, but there is something there. You know, this is Okada's whole vibe of just kicking the shit out of all the Zoomers that he doesn't like. So I would like to see more of this in this match. I want to see Shota get a bit of a kicking, and he just needs a few rough edges to take away the sort of soft, pretty boy image that he's got at the moment. Like, you know, he's out there tweeting pictures of himself with coffee spilled down his shirt, saying, "Oh, look, I spilled coffee on my shirt." Come on, mate. What are you doing? Like, is that something? Is that the sort of thing Antonio Inoki would tweet? You know, if he was still alive today. So I don't know. I would love him to take himself a bit more seriously, and ideally, what I would want is Jon Moxley to turn on him and tear that stupid jacket into several pieces and shove him up his arse, basically, and just kick his head in a bit. I think that would do Shooter a lot of good, but I don't necessarily think that's going to happen in this match. But that is my one fantasy booking hope for 2023, that we get Moxley turning on Shota.
Oh, that would lead to some really, really fun matches. And I would love to see how Moxley could really get more out of Shota, because there is something there. And this whole Shooter and roughneck persona where he's almost like trying to cross the two. He's that kid in high school who wants to be emo, but is wearing Abercrombie and Fitch and is the star quarterback of the football team. Like that, the two things just really don't work together unless you're just this next level pantheon of special wrestler. And I would really love to see Moxley just beat the ever living crap out of him. I think that would make for a lot of fun storyline in Japan, and then you can obviously bring Shota over here a time or two to continue that story, and that could be a really fun cross promotional thing, especially after we potentially get that singles match with Okada, which I'm guessing might happen at the Dome. Maybe I'm overthinking myself a little bit, but that I think that is something that I would be very, very interested in.
Yeah, if not that, maybe even a G1 quarterfinal or semi-final. I'd have to look at the blocks again to see if that's a possibility, but no smoke without fire. It does look like it's something they're building to in the long term, if not within this calendar year.
I do think that you would be able to get them in the semifinal, because you have the possibility of Okada Kiyomiya in the semis. Therefore, you would also have the potential of Shota and Okada in the semis, and then you could do Okada Kiyomiya and then Okada Shota in the finals if you really wanted to be ballsy. But that was probably a little bit too early for Shota. There's definitely the ability to make some stuff happen. So I'm fascinated to see where this goes. Any other thoughts on this 10-man tag before we move on here, gentlemen?
Not particularly. I'm just looking forward to it.
Yeah, this looks like it could be a lot of fun. Another match that wasn't one that we necessarily thought of being fun, but it looks like it could be a lot of fun, and that is the Cookie Monster himself, CM Punk versus Satoshi Kojima, which also is a first-round match in the Owen Hart tournament, which will kick off at Forbidden Door, and then will continue on the following Thursday on the Collision taping in Hamilton, Ontario, with the rest of the first round matches. Now, the hope was that we were going to get the Battle of the Go to Sleep with Kenta. That didn't happen for a myriad of reasons, and which we could go on and on about. But look, at the end of the day, it's not happening. We can just move on. But Kojima, whenever he's put in a singles match, he always works hard. It's always fun. He's going to lariat the hell out of CM Punk at some point. Then he's going to take the pin. It's going to be a really fun match, and I'm very excited for it. Joel, how excited are you for another Satoshi Kojima match?
I'm not going to lie. Like, when I was told yesterday, because let's throw some flowers at me. I had the exclusive there about the change of the match. I just burst out laughing. I could not believe that they pulled the plug on the Punk versus Kenta match, because that's the one that made all the sense in the world. But I'm not going to incur the wrath of either camp by sharing what I heard or who was responsible for that, because there's different parties out there leaking their side of the story. You ask Fightful and they're saying that Kenta pulled out. You're asking Dave Meltzer or the people I talk to, they're saying that it was Punk who pulled creative control on that. But either way, I actually think that the Kojima replacement is an upgrade for in-ring quality, if not a downgrade for the story. Because as much as it pains me to say it, I think Kenta's cooked at this point. All his matches that he's having at the moment are very heavy on the shenanigans. He's a guy who I thought was borderline for the G1. He's winning a lot of his matches by low blows and all the kind of nonsense that you'd expect to see in a House of Torture match. So I think in terms of in-ring quality, Kojima is probably a bit of an upgrade. And as you said, it'll be fun. There's a bit of the history there. There's that Punk video that's doing the rounds from back in the ROH days, that interview he's doing with he's got Samoa Joe sitting next to him and referencing the Kojima lariat. So should be a lot of fun. Just hopefully the lariats don't cause Phil any injuries. Just keeping my fingers crossed that he stays nice and healthy for whatever they've got planned for him at Wembley. So yeah, I would say this is going to be a match that's not going to be too physically taxing for Punk. I think they're just going to play it safe, get through all the greatest hits, all your favourite spots, and ends with Kojima staring at the lights.
Should be a nice little 3.5-star affair.
I'm wondering if this might open the show, and I know we talked about, as Odie is very excited about Kojima versus CM Punk, as he's just barking at the mic right now. But I'm very interested to see if this match opens the show, because you get the pop of Punk, and Kojima can still go. You give them 10 minutes, let them have fun, get the crowd really excited with Kojima, because everybody loves a nice little lariat, and Bread Club is wonderful as long as you aren't celiac. And I think this could be a really good way to open the show. But what fascinates me is overall how they're going to structure out this card, because I don't think you can finish. I mean, you could, but I don't know if they're going to finish the card with Ospreay, Omega, and Okada Danielson 1-2. I feel like they're going to have something in the middle to kind of let fans breathe a little bit, because that would just be an hour and a half of holy shit. All right, perfect. Well, let's.
Sorry, I was trying to lay out there. I think it'll be a nice little fun match.
Yeah, I think so too. Joel, anything more to add before we move on here?
No, I like the idea of it as being an opener. I think that'll be a good spot for it. But in terms of the structure for the rest of the cards, I will save my thoughts on what I think is going to happen for Omega Ospreay. But yeah, let's move on.
Perfect. Now, next up, we'll touch on this really quick, because this is somewhat in the realm of New Japan, but it's also not. And that would be the AEW Women's World Championship match, Toni Storm versus Willow Nightingale. And as mentioned earlier, this likely was going to be that's Mercedes Moné in this spot instead of Willow Nightingale, but obviously she had the broken ankle against Willow in the inaugural Strong Women's World title match. And this has kind of been building up a little bit on AEW television. I think this could be really good. You have the snarmy heel Toni Storm and Willow Nightingale, just the bubbly baby face, but they both are strong fighters. And I think this could be a really, really fun matchup. Obviously, disappointment with no Monet on the show. But Joel, do you have any thoughts here with Toni Storm and Willow Nightingale?
Yeah, it's a really good match on paper. I really like what I saw from Willow Nightingale at the last Strong show. Obviously, the plan was not for her to be the Strong Women's Champion initially, and they called an audible with that. But perfectly serviceable person to be holding the belt in the interim. It's just an interesting spot they find themselves in terms of the booking for that title, because if I'm not mistaken, Willow's title is not on the line. So
correct.
Would that necessarily mean then that if she loses, that she's forced to defend that at some point, or maybe just no one gives a shit? Like, it would be the first time that New Japan create a brand new singles title, plonk it on someone who works for a different promotion, and then we don't see it again for 6 months. So Not going to be losing sleep over that one, but yeah, probably the most interesting and high quality match they could have put on that would vaguely satisfy the criteria of some sort of cross promotional factors.
Yeah, I'm with you on the cross promotional factor. What really fascinated with me here is why the Strong title was not put on the line, and it's only Tony Storm's title is, and I don't think you can have Willow Nightingale win here. Just with the context of what the story is with Tony Storm, and then the potential of her versus Jamie Hayter at All In at Wembley, but. It just feels odd that the one title is only up for grabs, especially because like last year you had a match with multiple titles up for grabs with the tag team titles, which I find very interesting. Neither tag team champions as of right now are booked on the show. It's peculiar to me, but at the same time, I don't really think it's a big deal. Any
they
thoughts?
They forgot the title existed at one point. You know, in 8 months, Willow Nightingale's going to find that championship belt down the back of her sofa, collecting dust, and be like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." So
that was fun.
Yeah, I wouldn't overthink that too much.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's entirely because they don't want Tony to have the title, and they don't want her to lose to Willow. So this is just a compromise match.
There we go.
File under shit happens.
Speaking of filing under shit happens, what an interesting way to get here. We have a 4-way match with 3 champions, but only one title's on the line with the AEW International titles. Orange Cassidy defends against the 3 men that he competed with on Wednesday night's Dynamite in a tag team match, and that would be his partner Katsuyori Shibata and then his opponents Zack Sabre Jr. and Daniel Garcia. I'm a little disappointed that this is a 4-way match that you don't get you don't get Zack Sabre Jr. versus Orange Cassidy 1-on-1. But if there's one thing that I've noticed with Orange Cassidy matches, they always deliver no matter what you put in front of him, just because he's able to make it work with just about everyone. And the styles of these 4 individuals, I think, could mesh very, very well. You have the submission element. You have just the pure striking. You have that Orange Cassidy he has a lot of really nice counters, especially with like those tornado DDTs. He's got the Superman punch, the orange punch, I guess you could say. This could be a lot of fun. Disappointing it's not a 1-on-1, but at the same time, AEW is shown to really deliver with a lot of these multi-man matches. So this is very fun. Joel, when you take a look at this, 2 questions for you. One, are you a little bit surprised that Katsuyori Shibata is wrestling in a standard wrestling match on a New Japan show? And where do you see this going as far as a finish? Because could they potentially have Orange Cassidy lose here? And I think those are the 2 real intriguing things for me.
I don't think so. I think we were discussing this on the Slack yesterday, that it felt in doing an OC versus ZSJ singles match, they sort of put themselves into a corner. Again, similar situation as we talked about before, with Orange Cassidy holding a singles title and Zack holding a singles title. So this is, a bit of a cop out to have the 4-way. I think it's not going to shock anyone if Daniel Garcia is there to take the pin from Orange Cassidy. But that said, as much as I was looking forward to the potential 1-on-1 match between Cassidy and Zack, and I should say that Cassidy really won me over last year when the Ospreay versus OC match was announced. I think a lot of New Japan fans, myself included, were like, "What the fuck?" and very dismissive of it. But it was a really, really fun match. So I'm going into it a lot more open-minded. I think it's going to be a ton of fun. As you say, these multi-man matches and the multi-way matches are usually executed very well, and we don't get to see those sorts of matches all the time in New Japan. So I like the variety. I like that we're going to get something a bit different outside of the usual New Japan house style. So yeah, I'm imagining OC wins and pins Daniel Garcia. How strange is it to see Shibata? I mean, every time he comes out on an AEW show and they've got the New Japan logo with him, I think, come on, really? Are we still calling him a New Japan wrestler at this point? I mean, who knows what the fuck is going on there? It makes me sad and it's really confusing. We'd all love to see him wrestling back in Japan. I don't know if it's an insurance issue or what, but I'm not going to relitigate that for the millionth time. I'm just grateful that we're going to see him do some wrestling.
Yeah, this match, I think it'll be better than probably should be. It should be fun. It's a nice little way to get a couple more people on the card, like Daniel Garcia, who I think otherwise would have been squeezed out. But, we got to keep the Get Young People Over title on Zack Sabre Jr. to, continue New Japan's attempts to get young people over. Never mind his actual age. And, it should be a fun time. I think this is a very intriguing match.
I wonder if they actually take the belt off of Orange Cassidy here, because I don't think they're going to give it to Zack Sabre Jr. They could give it to Shibata and he could be a double champion for a little bit, but I don't see that either. But to me, it feels like if they're going to do anything, it would be Daniel Garcia. But at the end,
I don't think it's going to be this match. It doesn't feel right.
I don't think it will be either, but I still have an element of doubt. And that element of doubt is what's really fascinating here for me. And I'm excited to watch it because this is going to be a lot of fun. We had a couple multi-man matches last year and as Joel alluded to, that they delivered. And I think this one is going to deliver here as well. But I think we should really get to the meat of the card here. And let's start off here. AEW World Title, MJF versus Hiroshi Tanahashi. And MJF calling New Japan a rinky-dink indie fed in Japan was one of the most perfect lines I've ever heard come out of MJF, because he has no reverence or respect for his character does for anything in overseas in Japan. He's a snarmy territory guy who would just is obsessed with Mid-South and Mid-Atlantic and all the old school territories, like Jim Crockett Promotions. And Tanahashi obviously being the standard bearer for New Japan, and he has been for a good 20 years. I think this is kind of the perfect match. And to me, I don't see Hiroshi Tanahashi winning, but because it's Tanahashi, you have that little shred of doubt in the back of your head that maybe they'll pull the trigger here. And he still, even with his broken down body, I mean, it's G1 season, let's be honest, who knows how really broken down it is. We'll find out in a few weeks. It feels like anything could happen. And Joel, this feels like the perfect challenger for MJF for a multitude of reasons. And I'm curious your thoughts here, because I think this match is going to be structured in a very interesting way that's going to make itself completely different from the rest of the card.
Yeah, I mean, I predicted that we were going to get this match a few months ago, and that's not a Nostradamus-like take from me. I think a lot of people did, because Tanahashi is just that very easy pick for a guy who is a big name, is a big star. He can put on a good match for now, at least, and can easily take a loss without suffering as a result of that. So yeah, it makes complete sense. It makes sense for the story. He's the New Japan stalwart who's defending the pride of the company in the face of the arrogant and dismissive heel. So I disagree with you. I don't think there's any chance of Tanahashi winning this. If they get me to bite on any of the near falls, they will have done a terrific job, because I think it's an absolute formality that MJF wins this. But I hope that we get a spot somewhere in the match where Tanahashi gives MJF a good hard slap and knock the taste out of his mouth for saying all those terrible things about New Japan. I do have my worries about Tanahashi. He does look like he's noticeably slowing down and starting to move into dad territory. So hopefully they don't try to do anything too ambitious here. They keep it simple. They just play to the dynamics and the story and the characters, rather than trying to do anything too intricate, because with G1 right around the corner, I will be shitting bricks if anything happens there. So, I think this is an easy MJF win.
I'll say this. I don't necessarily think Tanahashi's going to win. I think you're right. It's a formality that MJF is going to, but just the sheer presence of Tanahashi, at least for me, will put a little bit of a shred of doubt that it could potentially go the way of the Ace. But yeah, it does seem like a formality, especially with, as I mentioned earlier, like the Jungle Boy's not winning the IWGP title. That's a negative % chance that that's happening. So I think it's probably the same for Tanahashi, but just his presence in there will keep a shred of doubt in my head. Fred, where are you at with this? Fred, you're muted.
I'm muted. What am I doing here? I do agree with Joel that Tana is looking more broken down these days, but having just watched a Hardy Boys match last night, I can say that he is not fully broken down. He was able to, be carryable in a couple of high profile singles matches. He had what I have as a 4-star against Okada back at Battle in the Valley. And I think he also had a 4-star on my card against Mike Bailey at the multiverse of whatever the hell Impact called the crossover show this year, the Dollar Store Forbidden Door. But
Forbidden Cat Flap.
I think MJF's great. I really do think MJF is a fantastic in-ring performer. He doesn't get enough credit for that because so much of his character is about not wrestling. But when he does wrestle, he has these high-profile matches that are excellent, And yes, they've come against Bryan Danielson and Adam Cole and the other pillars who are good in the ring, if ignoring their other flaws. But I fully believe that he could at least get a 4-star match out of what Tanahashi is in 2023. So I think this will be fun. I think there'll be a good bit of shtick, and I think that works to Tana's strengths. I mean, Tana right now, his biggest strengths are his charisma. Maybe he doesn't have knees anymore, but he still has the ability to come across as a star. And opposite and as a total babyface too. So opposite MJF, who is just a complete terrible heel in character. This could be a pretty fun match. It'll be a middle of the card kind of thing. It'll be maybe 15 minutes tops, but it'll be fun, I think.
Yeah, I think fun is the right word here, especially if you love old school territory wrestling, which it wouldn't shock me if this match was basically a carbon copy of something that from like the late 1970s, early 1980s, especially from like Mid-South, because we know how much Tony Khan really likes Mid-South, and he and MJF kind of have that connection with old school wrestling. But now we're at the meat of the card, guys, and these two matches are, you can call them dream matches, you can call them pretty much any superlative you want, and I think it would fit. And we'll start here. Kenny Omega defending the IWGP US title. Yes, the IWGP US title does exist, even though you thought it disappeared. He will be defending it against Will Ospreay, whom he beat for the title at Wrestle Kingdom on January the 4th. This is fascinating for a multitude of reasons, and it all starts with Will Ospreay's post-match promo at the Tokyo Dome, where he said if he can't beat Kenny Omega within the span of a calendar year, he will quit. And how they end up continuing or concluding this story, I think, is going to be really, really interesting. We're in Kenny's home country of Canada. Obviously, Toronto is hours away from Winnipeg, but it is still his home country of Canada. And Ospreay has been really ripping on Canada for being subpar in comparison to other places he's wrestled. And he said on Dynamite, England and Japan, as far as like more prestigious places. So having all those elements, and then you also have the All-In show at Wembley coming up, and then a potential Tokyo Dome matchup as well. It's very interesting to see how they're going to go with this story. They could have Ospreay win here, and then they could finish it up with a trilogy match down the line. But there is a lot of potential here. And Joel, I'll start with you. When you take a look at this match, what are your biggest takeaways going in? Because there is a lot of major question marks as to where this can go.
Well, I watched Dynamite, and as soon as they had that little segment with Don Callis coming out and exchanging words with Ospreay and talking about lending his private security team, then to me, that's a massive flashing red light that we're unlikely to get a clean finish in this match. I don't know if it's going to be DQ or count out or some sort of interference, but it feels like some sort of dusty finish where I don't really know who wins, to be honest, but I think a rubber match is an inevitability, quite possibly at Wembley Stadium. So, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of interference in this one. And I don't really mind who wins, to be honest. This is the thing. When we're getting to the dream matches at the top of this card, again, like I said, I just want to see cool matches with big stars. And I don't think, well, I can only speak for myself, but I'm not going to be like gnashing my teeth and throwing the whole relationship in the bin if Omega wins this again. But I think the most likely outcome is an Ospreay win with some sort of interference.
That's an interesting, because when I saw the Don Callis inclusion, I don't think that this is the first time that they've interacted. And Fred, you can kind of correct me on that, because I believe it happened on a Dynamite or a Rampage where they had some form of interaction. Maybe it was social media, but I think we've had this conversation before about the potential of Callis and Ospreay.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a direct interaction. I do know that Callis has always been putting over. He's always put over Ospreay, as I get tongue tied. Sorry, on commentary, very strong. Like ever since he first came into AEW, for his guest appearances. So I think this is a logical conclusion of what we're going to be seeing with these two. And yeah, I mean, it should be I do agree with Joel. I do agree that we are not going to see a clean finish. That's just not something that's going to happen this time around. There will be some kind of and I don't think it's going to be a win for Ospreay either. So what I imagine is it's going to be maybe some botched interference where Ospreay ends up mad at Callis. But yeah, I mean, this match should be amazing. I imagine this will probably be more of a setup for the third match down the line, which means that this will, big air quotes, only be like 4 3/4 stars. Such a disappointment. Rather than maybe the greatest match I've ever seen. And but yeah, I'm very excited for this. I can't wait until it happens.
I'm very intrigued to see if they obviously when you have the rest of these matches having a non-clean finish like that, I don't think necessarily would be the worst thing in the world. But when you have a card you have a really good card, but this is essentially a 2-match card, and having one of those to have like a messy finish, a dusty finish, interference, kind of impacting the finish. AEW has never been afraid to use interference, and we all know that. It's kind of become a meme that there's interference in nearly every single match. But when it comes to finishing a feud or like having a really big match in a feud, they don't do that often. It's more of like on a week-to-week basis, they use interference as heat to continue stories going. I wonder how Tony Khan and Gato are comfortable having interference in one of the 2 biggest matches, arguably, of the calendar year. I'm not sold on it, but I don't necessarily think it's an impossibility. It feels like a weird spot for it, even though it makes sense within the story. It's my brain's just fried. I don't know, but I hope you understand where I'm coming from.
Well, I would say if you're thinking, is Gedo really going to allow interference in, top of the card? Like, did you see the evil title reign?
The evil title reign aside, yeah, you're 100% right. He's never been afraid of it, but to me, this feels different than like, hey, this is like Destruction or King of Pro Wrestling. Like this is an inter-promotional show where you're trying to put your absolute best foot forward in a lot of these elements. And that's where I kind of have the real hesitation, and it's we all know Gato loves Memphis and
gotta get that heat, baby.
Yeah, and I get it, but it's I don't know. I'm just having trepidation here with having one of these top two matches have interference mar the finish. But I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again, and that's part of the nature of this. But it's an intriguing element to add to this whole picture.
Yeah, I wouldn't be all that surprised at all, to be honest. I think it's inevitability is strong, but I mean it's well within the wheelhouse of both Gato and Tony Khan to do this. So I wouldn't even blink, to be honest.
Yeah, this is going to be fascinating. Are we all in the ballpark of we think Kenny Omega is going to end up winning this in some way, shape, or form?
I think so.
Joel, how about you?
My pick was Ospreay to win through some sort of interference, but
okay.
I'm on the fence with that one. It's not something I'm going to die for. I think it's a bit of a coin toss, to be honest, at the moment. I think when all said and done, I think Ospreay is winning the US title, whether it's here or if there's a rubber match down the line, because it needs to make its way back to New Japan at some point. And if it's not Ospreay that's going to beat Omega for it, then who else is it going to be? So I just think for the sake of getting that title away from Kenny Omega, it's going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah, and I don't think New Japan necessarily needs the title, but I really do think it should be featured a little more than it has. It has pretty much been on ice, other than the Jeff Cobb match, since January the 5th when Omega teamed with Okada at New Year's Dash. But one question I'll have here, and as we transition to what Excalibur, I think, referred to 10 times on Wednesday night as the main event, Bryan Danielson versus Kazuchika Okada, is which match closes the show? Are we certain it's going to be Okada and Danielson? I think Omega and Ospreay, especially with the Canadian connection with Omega, has just as much of a claim. Joel, I'll start with you, then we'll kick it to Fred. Which match actually goes on last here?
I think it's Okada Danielson. I've seen it doing the rounds that this is the main event. I can't remember where that was actually announced. Did Excalibur actually said that on the show, that is this officially the main event?
He kept referencing main event, but we also knew that the technical main event of Dynamite was Danielson calling out Okada. So I don't know how much of that intertwines, but it wouldn't shock me if this was the main event and not Omega Ospreay, but he used the word main event a lot.
For me, if I was booking it, I think I would have Okada Danielson as the main event, especially if Ospreay Omega ends the way I think it will. I think you want to end your show with the biggest dream match with a clean finish, and I think it's this one. I don't know if this is going to be the kind of thing where with Forbidden Door, the company sort of take it in turns to have their guys going over in the main event. But if you're subscribing to that logic, then yeah, it would make sense for Okada to win this one. I don't think it would hurt Danielson at all. And I don't think New Japan would be willingly offering up Okada to be losing going into the Grade 1 climax, where I think Okada's probably going to be one of the favourites. So, however, that being said, I don't really mind who wins or loses. As I said before, if Danielson wins this, I'm not going to be tearing my hair out and crying and shitting my diaper about the New Japan guy losing. Like I said, I'm just excited to see an honest-to-God dream match that, fingers crossed, stays on the card. No one gets hurt. And I'm just looking forward to it, to be honest. I don't really care who wins.
Fred, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really matters that much. This is more about being able to put on the match and the kind of celebration of wrestling that comes with it. But yeah, I think it's pretty clear to me that Okada is going to end up winning it, and I can't even really envision Danielson picking up the W. It just seems maybe there's some shenanigans along the way. Again, look at the bookers, but I think it's pretty clear that Okada will pick up the W.
I'm very fascinated about this match, and let me tell you, when Okada came out on Dynamite right before Danielson was about to stomp Ishii's face in, when that coin dropped, that pop, that's a megastar pop. That is what people think Roman Reigns gets. But that was a huge star pop, and I find it fascinating, and I'll actually ask this because Diego Garcia has a 2-part question, but I'll go to the second part right now. Would you give Okada the AEW World Championship when New Japan starts to cycle him down? But I think the real question is Okada going to be cycled down anytime in the next 15 years? Like, other than like, hey, we're going to cycle you down because we're going to make you balloon Okada to give Omega a run, and then we're going to give Jay White some shine. Like, it's the whole aspect of Okada is just fascinating because he's what, 33?
35.
He's 35, and he's been wrestling at the highest level for like 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
He's just so incredible, and I'm fascinated to kind of see how his arc projects. And this match, especially with Danielson, this is going to be like, I don't get a lot of like goosebumps or like get like super amped up or like emotional with wrestling. I love wrestling, but I become more stoic as I become an analyst in this space, and especially in football. But I was standing up, I was pacing, I had goosebumps. That felt special in a lot of ways. And I'll answer Diego's question. I think if you have an opportunity to put the belt on Okada at any point in time with your partnership in New Japan, you do it, because it's only going to make you stronger. It's only going to make the belt stronger. And it's going to make Okada, hey, yeah, he could do a belt collector gimmick like Omega, because he's arguably the greatest wrestler of all time. And that's what really makes this match so fascinating for me.
Oh, I think we've all forgotten as well that Okada is holding one of the most prestigious titles there is, the never openweight 6-man championship. So yeah, there's no way he can be losing this one. But yeah, I mean, you talked about absolutely. We're talking about Okada's future. I mean, this gimmick change he's done now has pretty much set the table for him to be doing that for the next 10, maybe even 15 years. So I don't think he has moved away permanently from the title scene. Obviously, they're going to be going back to him from time to time to be the world champion, but they can really take their time with him. And his role now is to get over people like Shota, Ren Narita, Tsuji, Kiyomiya if he's sticking around, maybe even a Gabe Kidd. He is there to be the guy to feud with the young up-and-comers, and to be that final test for them, as he's doing for Ospreay at the moment. And I just think it's a really refreshing change of pace for him. And case in point, my favourite bit of Dynamite, that little smile on Okada's face when he picked up what's his name, Wheeler Yuta, and was like, oh, here's another young wrestler for me to bully and mercilessly. So that was incredible. So he was in his element there. So yeah, it's a great change of scenery for Okada. And yeah, the belt will come back to him from time to time. I don't see Tony Khan ever putting his world title on someone who is not under contract to him. That would really surprise me. Do I think it would be a mistake? Absolutely not. I think it would be really cool if more companies would take risks like that and belt up outsiders. It just makes things more fresh and interesting.
I think the best part about Okada, Rainmaker and Wheeler Yuta in the middle of the ring, was after Dynamite went off the air, Yuta tweeted, "Does this mean I'm out of chaos now?" And I thought that was just a really nice piece of long-term booking. Just the little things are what gets me in wrestling. There's so much continuity between these two companies with a lot of different elements, and that's one of them, because Yuta obviously with the Best Friends, and then he went over for the Best of the Super Juniors in 2022. Like those little things just make things so much better, and I greatly appreciate how these two companies pay attention to those details.
There's absolutely no chance that Okada gets downcycled before 2033.
Unless he wants to be.
I mean, unless he wants to be, sure. But like, just in terms of talent, like, there's no way. Even when this class of young lions gets established as main eventers, and I'm a full-blown Yota Tsuji believer now.
Yeah, you're a blaster of jeans.
I will blast. Watch out. I mean, there's just no way. I mean, Okada is the New Japan Golden Boy, and he's like in that rarefied air of like A++ tier, like S tier, S+ tier, whatever nerdy terminology you want to use in New Japan kayfabe. And I just can't, barring like a complete collapse of his body at the age of 40, which seems very unlikely. I think he's just going to be a major force in that company for a long time, and unlikely to even have the ability to go spend 6 months in America with AEW unless he requested specifically.
Well, I mean, Japan just did get a pop-up In-N-Out burger, so if there was a pop-up one, maybe they'll get a permanent one, and then it'll be a lot less appealing for him to come over to the States. Obviously, that's half me and half not, because he does love his In-N-Out. But let's go with the premise that Okada wins, and I want to start with Joel and then go over to Fred. What's next for Bryan Danielson, as far as, because obviously he spoke at length about him wanting to do all these dream matches, and especially like he wants to go down to Mexico and wrestle Blue Panther in Arena Mexico. Are there still more dream matches for him to have in New Japan? Does this potentially mean that they could have a rematch at a bigger show in Japan and Danielson would go over there? I'm very intrigued to see what it would be next for him in terms of the relationship with these two companies.
There's been a lot of clamour from New Japan fans and AEW fans as well to see Danielson in the G1. Personally, I kind of like this idea of having his big showcase singles matches against top New Japan guys as like a little treat that you get once and twice a year. So there's so many guys he could have matches with. I suppose Zack Sabre Jr. is the next obvious one. But honestly, like, you throw a dartboard throw a dartboard with all the New Japan roster in there, and I would put down good money to see them wrestle Bryan Danielson. So I don't think there's any chance of us running out of potential crossover dream matches for him in the future. Just any of them, sign me up, because he's brilliant.
Do you think he could have the Chris Jericho arc, like when Jericho came into the company? First it was Omega, then it was Naito, and then he kind of ran the gauntlet through some of like the big top stars, and obviously he got the win against Tanahashi in the Tokyo Dome. Do you think that could be the arc for Danielson here?
Yeah, why not? I mean, I think the next step for him would be to wrestle on a big show in Japan, because I think the reception that just the Danielson video package got at Dominion was really tremendous. And I think the Japanese fans would love to see him, whether wrestling in Tokyo or Osaka. It could be a Dominion, it could be a Wrestle Kingdom, whatever. You take your pick, really. He could just fly in anytime he likes, wrestle anyone he wants. And I think that does big numbers in front of a Japanese crowd.
Fred, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of dream matches left. I think Naito. I think Sabre is a pretty obvious one from the technical aspect, and we nearly got it last year until it got ruined. And Tanahashi, I think, still qualifies. That may be rapidly aging out, but we'll see how healthy Tanahashi can stay, because it's going down pretty fast. But in Ospreay, of course. I mean, Danielson Ospreay would be an amazing experience. Short of that, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get Danielson in the G1. It just seems really unlikely that Tony Khan will give up Danielson for a whole month, even though he could really benefit from that month away in terms of AEW storylines. But also, I think there's some legitimate health concerns about Danielson being able to go through a G1, because, I don't know that he'll really be willing to put the brakes on and kind of make his way, through 7 matches or however many matches. Joel brought this up. But yeah, they do now have 5 hours of television to fill a week, and Danielson is a very valuable member of that. Member of the roster for doing that, I should say.
So I want to push back a little bit here, Fred, with the you don't think Danielson could survive a G1? And
I'm not saying he couldn't. I just think there's enough concerns. I mean, look at how he's been bubble wrapped for this Forbidden Door. yeah, I don't think he's worked a match in weeks now.
Double or Nothing was Anarchy in the Arena was the last one.
Yeah.
But I want to point this out because, and it's something that Joel can expand on. The format of the G1 is significantly different than the G1 that a lot of us have pictured. Like, your 9 matches, you're basically going every other or every third day. And on your off days, when there are shows, you're doing multi-man tags to set up the next night. So it was a real grueling grind. This year's a little different because it's 4 blocks. You're only wrestling 7 singles matches, and you're not doing those multi-man tags. So and with the new 20-minute time limit, in theory, if Danielson was going to survive a G1, this would be the easiest type of G1 that he would be able to survive, considering what the schedule is. It's less grueling, it's less demanding, there's more time off. And I think if you're going to do it, the 32-man field is the way to do it.
Yes, but I think we're going to see Eddie Kingston's going to be a big test of this. Because there's a lot of jokes in the writer's Slack specifically. Yeah, about how he's going to die. Basically, his body parts are going to fly off like a broken G.I. Joe from 1987. He's going to have like one arm in one corner of the ring and a leg in the other. And I don't know. I mean, I think that's a bit overblown, but also it's not that far off. And, you know, if Eddie gets hurt, you know, I think that's going to be a major thing to consider for future G1s about AEW sending people over. When the field was announced, you know, I saw Eddie Kingston's name first, and my thought was, well, that's a good first guy out of 2 for AEW to send over. Let's see who the second guy is. And then there wasn't a second guy. It was just Eddie. And I love Eddie, but, you know, I do wish that there was more representation. I'd love to see more AEW involvement in the G1. But we got what we got.
I would also say that I think that the point about the smaller blocks doesn't really apply if it's someone who's going to go deep in the tournament. Because if they're going to make the quarterfinals, then that's 8 matches. They're making the semis, that's 9. So, and again, for the multi-man tags, during a regular 20-man G1, those guys in the blocks were not exactly busting their guts to you know, deliver huge work rate performances in those preview multi-man matches. I think more to the point with Danielson, like as you said, like Tony Khan is not going to let him disappear for a month when he's got 5 hours of TV to fill each week. And secondly, I think it would just be a waste. It would be leaving money on the table to have all these Bryan Danielson singles matches. When you know you're touring around Japan and a lot of these venues, I just think it would be a waste. I think I'd rather save it for special occasions. Rather than, you know, burning off a load of singles matches within the space of a month where there's not going to be the crowds or the arenas to do it justice.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. It would be great to see him in a G1, but maybe it would be smarter to have him do a New Japan Cup where you're only going to burn off like 2, 3, or maybe 4, and you don't even have to burn off any major ones, and he can still do a tournament. It could be that in theory could be a nice like a consolation prize for those who really want him in a G1, and maybe it can get Danielson's itch enough, but we'll see. Last question for you guys here on this Forbidden Door card, and then we'll blow through some news and get out of here. Do we know the commentators? We obviously Kevin Kelly, and we're going to mention Collision here in a little bit, is the new lead commentator for Collision, but that is not going to, in theory, impact any of his work with Japan. It may impact his ability to be in Japan sometimes, but he's going to be doing, both for the time being. Last year was Kevin Kelly, Excalibur, and I believe it was Taz. Are we going to see the same group of guys here this year as well?
I think it's going to be like last year where they actually cycled 6 different guys through. They had Caprice Coleman out there for a bit, and Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross. I just don't think it's going to be like you'll have probably 2 core guys for the night, and then you'll cycle in everybody so they get their little guest appearances in. Pre-show was Excalibur, Taz, and Kevin Kelly. And I would not be shocked if that was the core group this year. And, you know, on top of all that, Jim Ross is, I think, taking time off, though who knows how much time he meant when he said he was going away for a little bit. With Jim Ross, that could have been like 24 hours, and he'd be like, all right, my eye's still black, but I'm ready to go and, you know, back to the commentary desk because I can't miss shows. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just very. It's going to be a bunch of guests. I don't think we're going to have Ring of Honor representation this time. Although I would love to have Caprice or Ian on the call for a bit. But
there
I
is
do
a
think
chance with the pure title. There
true.
is that chance.
But it's not on the line, and I think that's usually if there's the ROH title on the line, then that's when they bring people in from ROH to call it. But I do think you're going to get just about the whole complement of announcers from the regular guys. Would I be shocked by like Daddy Magic popping on for the Jericho match? No, I would not. Callis could pop in. You could have God. I mean, there's a bunch of possibilities, but I think it'll probably be that same core.
Yeah, Joel, can you?
If we're not flying in Gino Gambino for Donkey Chokey, then
Okay,
I'm going to put my foot through the TV and send Tony Khan the bill.
I was just gonna say, can you make some calls and get Gino Gambino over here, because I would love to see his interactions with Taz. I think that would be a fun commentary table.
Joel, are you anti Gino Gambino?
No, I love him. I think he's great.
Okay, good.
That was peak New Japan booth when I think him, Chris, and Gino is a really fun combination.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't sure with the foot through the TV comment. I love Gino Gambino. I love the Doki Choki. I love when he is able to come in and do a show. He's a great little twist on the classic 80s heel commentator thing that's kind of been run into the mud by this point. But I think he really is able to do it well and interestingly. And I love Gino Gambino. So if we do get Gino Gambino for even just one match, it'll all be worth it.
Oh yeah, the Doki Choki line is just it's iconic for me. I agree. Any final thoughts on the show, gentlemen, before we get some news and get out of here?
Obviously it's funny that we've spent all this time talking about Forbidden Door, and the thing that was talked about for seemingly almost an entire year of CM Punk's eventual return. We're just kind of like, yeah, it happened. But with all this drama, there's still kind of drama surrounding it just because he is CM Punk and Brawl Out happened and everything. I mean, CM Punk's back and he's ready to go, and we'll see for how long. I feel like I should get one of those. It's been X days since last injury, only updated to last drama for AEW. Just have it ready for the show. Obviously it'd be great if everything went well, but look at the Kenta match that didn't happen, and just we don't know exactly why. There's a lot of rumors. I think Joel probably knows better than I do. I'm just a schmuck with a Twitter account I don't use. But I mean, it's clear to me that CM Punk gets to have his way to a certain extent, and unique to CM Punk in this day and age, he has a certain perception on how that way should go, I guess, would be my very polite way of putting it.
Yeah, I think there was a real danger that the whole buzz for Forbidden Door was about to get swallowed up by arguments over who pulled out of the Kenta Punk match first. So I'm really glad that they had a strong dynamite to get it back on track, and both sets of fans excited. And I'm just lamenting the fact that, because this show will be on Sunday night in North America, which would make it Monday morning for me, and I've foolishly signed up to be teaching summer camp, so I'm supposed to be teaching while this show's going on. So I'm going to have to think of some way to finesse my way into being able to watch it live, because it's it feels like one of those events I don't want to watch it after the fact. I want to be watching it live and get involved in all the live chat, whether that's on the Discord or the Slack or Twitter. It feels like an event that you want to be a part of.
Yeah. Well, I think the important thing is, Joel, you said this is a science camp, right? Physics, man. Force equals mass times acceleration. You can.
Love it.
It's time for the old I blanked. Art Donovan. How much does this fellow weigh? And then you can start calculating.
So fun fact, when I was in high school, I was in AP physics, and at the end of the year, we got to go to Valley Fair, which is like the amusement park. So kind of think Six Flags. It's kind of the same gimmick. And while we were there, we had to actually calculate like some of like those equations like with rides. So we would go up to like on the Wild Thing, which is a 200-foot drop roller coaster, and find out and do calculations, and it was fascinating. And there you go. That's just ask how much force does Ishii chop with? That's what you're going to have to get everybody to figure out.
Yeah, how hard does Ishii have to chop someone to generate Chernikov radiation?
Yeah. Well, Joel, I greatly appreciate, and I know Fred does as well, you joining us here today. And it's been a lot of fun to finally get a chance to chat with you, even though we've been chatting online for years now. That your work with the Super J-Cast and you and Damon, who I wish we could have gotten here today, but I apparently lost his number over the last few years.
No, Damon pulled creative control. He's done a Punk.
Of course, Damon would do a CM Punk, but it's been a blast talking with you, and I gotta say your work with the Super J-Cast is something I really admire and try to incorporate with all of my doings in the world of media, because you guys present such a fun product. While you take yourselves very seriously, you don't take yourselves seriously at all, and it's just a special chemistry that you guys have, and it's been a blast chatting with you today.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me on. The day you sent me those Buffalo Wild Wing sauces, you got a friend for life. So anytime you want me on the show, you just tell me when and where, and I will be here with a smile on my face.
Well, hopefully with you saying you're moving to the UK, I don't think there's a B-Dubs there yet. They have ones in Qatar and Saudi Arabia, but I don't think they have them in Europe yet. I think you can get the sauces there, and if you can't, it'll be a lot cheaper for me to send them to you than China. So you let me know, and I'll get you the hookup anytime.
My guy, love it. Thank you so much.
Joel, thanks for coming on. Had a lot of fun.
Thank you, Fred. All right, take care, guys.
Take care, Joel. All right, that was Joel from the Super J-Cast. What a tremendous individual he is, and
what a treat.
Yeah, tremendous treat. And let's talk about news before we get out of here today, because we just did an hour and a half on what could be the greatest American pay-per-view of all time.
It's a strong candidate already.
Yeah, let's talk about CM Punk. We talked a little bit about it. I know.
We got to do it. We got to do it. Got to eat our vegetables.
It's different now. We're not talking about it coming back. We're talking about him being an idiot because he's back. This collision rating, 816,000. 0.33 in the demo, number 3 on the day on Saturday. And obviously it's technically a sport, but it's not a sport at the same time, where it'll be fascinating to see how things kind of develop as far as what the ratings are. This is going to be really, really interesting to kind of keep tabs on. I think this is a really, really strong rating for a Saturday. I want to see it go up against some of the dog days of college football and dynamite matchups. Like when Alabama plays LSU.
Oh, it's going to get slaughtered.
Oh, yeah, it's going to get slaughtered. But how slaughtered? How does it hold up? And I want to see what this will settle in as. If I had to guess, 550.22 is where it ends up settling.
You mean on a week-to-week basis or against like the biggest game? Okay, I was going to say against like a Bama LSU or a Bama Georgia game that it probably dip into the 4s, frankly. I think that's a pretty safe bet.
Well, I'm talking like a settling point. Like, Dynamite settled into about 850.3 on the demo. Yeah. That's kind of it. It's baseline. Like, that's kind of what you want to compare it to on a week-to-week basis. But I think 550.22 feels about right, considering this is 2 hours. It's being presented in a much more big-time way than Rampage has been.
Yeah, I think it's really. I think there's a good chance that it'll drip down that much. I'm going to go 6 just to lay it up a little bit, because I do think it'll be pretty strong for a while. I'll put a caveat on it that Tony Khan doesn't just get bored and go back down to one A show, which I don't think he'll do. I think he has to keep this as an A show, frankly. And of course, there's also the caveat of what if CM Punk decides that he has to murder someone backstage, next week. It's always a big question with him.
What were your thoughts on Collision, Fred? Because
what do you think? I want to talk to you about this. I thought it was a decent show, but what do you think? A good show, even 8 out of 10, maybe. Yeah. What do you think about the presentation? Because it felt very different from Dynamite.
I love that it felt different from Dynamite.
I do too.
I thought it was good. It doesn't feel like they're just giving you 2 hours of the same programming. It feels like you're getting something different within the confines of the same thing. It's like going to McDonald's, but this McDonald's has a play place and the ice cream machine works. Like it feels like the same, but it's different and unique. And I really, really, really like that element where you get a little bit of everything. And the characters that you're going to see spread across these two shows, and the fact that CM Punk, even though he was on Dynamite and he made reference to it, he's like, I'm a Collision guy. I'm not even supposed to be here. Like sticking another fork into the Elite. And he's going to do that every second he can because he's CM Punk. But you're getting a different show and you're not getting a rehash. So one thing that was frustrated me as a kid, and I didn't really understand this, like I'd watch SmackDown and then I watched Velocity thinking, oh, I'm just getting more wrestling. Half the show was just recapping SmackDown. And I appreciate that they're just not doing that. It's fresh wrestling television. And I'm starting to worry about Tony Khan stretching himself too thin from a wrestling perspective. I like that we're hearing that some people are getting their hands more in creative, and that creative's been good so far. Like Bryan Danielson, like give Danielson the book, man. Like I don't know if he could handle it the same way Khan does, but I feel like he would be somebody you could trust with it. Like I just worry that he's doing Ring of Honor television too, and he's doing 5 hours of AEW television. And he is director of football ops for the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's a lot.
Yeah, he's a busy fella. As someone who operates best on like 9 hours of sleep a night, I have no idea how he does it. He needs booking help, and it's good that he's found people that he can rely on to help him with that. And I don't know. If the show is like this every week, then it's going to be a great success, at least creatively.
We'll see, because the first Rampage had Christian Cage v Kenny Omega for the Impact World title.
Second, I think. First.
The second was CM Punk.
Oh, that's right. You're right. It got me.
So the first week did like 800,000, and then CM Punk did like, I think it was like 1.2 million, and then it cratered. Yeah. I was at the worst Rampage of all time, because Quake at the Lake was an all-time Dynamite, and then literally the worst Rampage ever. Like I got to see the Best Friends versus the Trust Busters in the main event.
Oh man, that's rough. That is bad.
Yeah, that was also the infamous night where Sammy Guevara called Eddie Kingston a fat piece of shit.
Oh yeah, it's been ruined all that.
Yeah, that got some heat in the building. But I mean, when we saw the Rampage lineup, a bunch of people left, including Jeremy Sexton, BOW contributor, who's been on the show before. He ended up leaving early because it wasn't very good. It stunk. But we're gonna keep an eye on Collision, and this is going to be a fun one to watch. And I know I won't be able to watch it every Saturday, especially during football season. I'm going to be watching that shit on Mondays. Like, there's just going to be no time. But it's going to be fun to keep tabs on. Rampage was up 45% week over week, 30% in the key demo. It was up 45%, but it only did 423,000. I'm confused by your show notes, Fred.
That is what Meltzer said. So,
okay.
I can pull up here in a bit, but yeah.
Well, let's just trust Meltzer. Number 12 on the day, 423,000.13 in the demo. Look, I think they're going to be putting more into Rampage because they're going to have to. I hope Rampage just becomes WCW Saturday night and you just get cool, nerdy matches, like the 4-match card with like Shibata defending the Pure title, Zack Sabre Jr. with the TV title, like that kind of stuff. Just do that. Do cool things, like nerd matches. Give us like Vikingo versus Satnam Singh, like just weird stuff too.
Yeah.
Like, I think that could be your playground, your area to test things out. And I'm a very intrigued individual when it comes to how they're going to use Rampage moving forward, because there is no dark elevation. This is where you can build up your Sky Blues. This is where you can really give Jungle Boy a bunch of singles matches and keep getting him more and more experience. Like I don't know if there's an equivalent to Brad Armstrong, but get a Brad Armstrong in there and just let him wrestle every week.
Oh, Tony Nese. You know, I mean, they got plenty of fellas that would fit right in on Saturday night.
Yes,
1996.
Yeah, this could be really fun. But we'll see how things go. We're going to keep tabs on it. And
I double checked the number, and the 45% or whatever I wrote in the show notes, I accidentally closed it out, is accurate, because the previous week they only had 291K watching. So,
oof.
Yeah, that's a oof rating right there.
Roosh and his father, Bestia del Ring, quit AAA. They had only made a couple appearances for AAA, and they were technically freelancers. And they still technically are, but they are done.
They're
with
freelancing elsewhere.
Yeah, that stuff like IRWG and Big Lucha. I mean, they're still going to show up in Mexico, because I mean, it's Roosh. Mm-hmm. He's arguably the biggest star in Mexico, and LA Park is begging Roosh to still make the date for Triple Mania Tijuana, because they have a tag match, and the potential hair versus mask match of Roosh and LA Park could sell out a big stadium down in Mexico. So that will be interesting to keep tabs on. I don't expect him to show the date, because they quit AAA, because I mean,
they could always go back.
It's AAA.
This could be it's AAA and it's Roosh. It's a very Roosh way of negotiating. Just outright saying, I'm gone, you need to give me more money. I don't know if we're ever going to get this La Parca Roosh match that would be the biggest drawing match in Mexico in years. Just because of all the drama around it, the fact it will almost certainly never be in CMLL because of how Roosh left CMLL and how CMLL views people that have left them. And just La Parca being a wild card too, and AAA being a hot mess of a promotion. It's just absolute chaos. It could happen. Maybe we need to get Sponge Guy from Japan in here just to drop some money to make sure it happens. But I wouldn't hold my breath on this occurring. It would be crazy if it did, because the ones they did a few years ago were just absolutely insane brawls, and they're both massive stars with all kinds of charisma. But don't get too excited. Also, don't get too excited about Roosh now being available for Forbidden Doors in the future, because he's almost certainly going to permanently live on that CMLL shit list. They won't want him around, and New Japan likes CMLL and thus follows their requests when it comes to this kind of thing. So even though he's not involved with AAA at the moment, he would obviously, he's not going to be on this one, but if they were booking a new one, he would not be on that either. I would almost guarantee that.
Disappointing, because it'd be cool to see the Lucha Brothers do stuff with New Japan talent. But that's wrestling politics. Couple more pieces of news, and then Fred's got a little surprise. Tony and Shad Khan have showed interest in buying Bellator. Do they just want to compete with WWE in every facet? Is Tony Khan trying to be Ted Turner?
It's disruption time, baby. I mean, I honestly, I don't see the upside. And granted, I don't follow MMA very much, but I don't see the upside in owning the number 2 MMA promotion in the world at this point in time. Maybe you'll be able to snap up some big stars as UFC just cheaps out on paying them.
I think that's the play.
Yeah, I guess that would be the play, but like the way their contracts are structured, it's such a fight to get people as free agents. Talk about an industry that needs a union, which will also never happen, just like wrestling. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird story, but I guess we'll see,
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch play out. MJF is going to make his Rampage debut this week. Yeah, he's going to be on Rampage for the first time. Fred, I find that one very, very interesting. But that's it for news. And you
not quite. Not quite. I do have one more thing, and then we got the Rampage and Collision lineups. But AEW is launching a figure fighting's mobile game, or fighters mobile game, where they are partnering with Immutable X, a blockchain company. So we're getting some form of friggin' NFTs with AEW. Just a complete waste of resources and everything. Love it. Great.
Yeah, very, very interesting. But Fred, you have a cage match game to finish the show.
I do. I'm going to lay this one out for you. This fella has a 9.68 as a wrestler on Cage Match.
Oh,
extremely high. And here is one rating of him that is a 2.0. I got to pick and choose, of course, to filter out the obvious parts of this, but this is from a user named Porco Rosso 1. It says it's a April 2022 comment, and it says this wrestler has deteriorated into sludge these past couple of years, beginning in 2018, slowly getting worse year over year. I remember him as a great wrestler a few weeks before that, and then I watch him now, and I'm sadly reminded that the years of him being in big matches have taken a toll on him. He simply can't have any other match other than long matches with contrived kickouts of signature moves, long sequences that mean nothing because the match must reach a certain length, and an opening stanza with no bearing on the middle or end of the match. After a while, it gets tiresome to look at, and with each match, this person gets worse and worse.
Okay. I have multiple guesses here. I'm going to start with Hiroshi Tanahashi.
That is incorrect, unfortunately.
John Cena.
Also incorrect.
Okada.
There you go.
I thought it was one of the three because you could honestly have talked about, said that exact line for almost any of them. But the down cycle, this must have been during his Balloon Guy phase.
It was April 2022, and I think Balloon Guy was a year or two before that. Was this during the my back hurts phase?
No. So April 2018 was 2 months before he dropped the title to Kenny Omega.
But this comment was from last April 2022.
Oh,
this guy declared that he was bad in 2018.
Balloon Guy phase was 2018. Right after the Omega match, and then it lasted 6 months, and then he came back, brought back the Trunks against Jay White. Man, the back thing. I wonder if he just hates Prick Okada, because Prick Okada rules.
Yes,
but it's also not like an epic kind of story character either.
Yeah, April 2022, Okada was kind of a weird in between because he didn't really go like full jerk to the Young Lions until I would say the past 6 to 8 months. 2022 was just kind of I'm Okada, Okada. Mm-hmm. So I can kind of get it, but also just like he can't have good matches anymore is a hell of a take to have on Okada at this, at that point in time.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it. And this is going to be a very fun weekend for professional wrestling. You can follow the show on Twitter at GoodBadHungee. You can email the show at hungeepod@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at TheRealForno. All my Vikings work at USA Today's The Vikings Wire and at Vikings First and Skull. You can search that both on YouTube and your podcast feed to get all that information. You can follow Fred on Twitter at Flagrant Wrestling, because Ted Turner rules and Vince McMahon sucks. You can also subscribe to his currently paused Patreon, because once he restarts that, you are going to want it. It's a much more analytical based view of professional wrestling. And if you want to donate to the show, in the show notes, there is a link to donate to the show and show us your appreciation for the hard work that we put in every single week to bring you guys the best AEW content that you can find. Enjoy Forbidden Door. This is going to be one of the better professional wrestling shows in a long time. And
I'm very excited. Do you want to do a Monday show?
I think we should, and we should break down this Forbidden Door show, because this is.
I think I'll be able to. So let's plan on it. Let's do on-air production meetings. This is how a professional does it, right?
On-air production meeting right before we finish the show. Listen, You're going to get a Forbidden Door
I am trash at this.
This is going to be a lot of fun, and you're going to get all of our thoughts on that show, and it's going to be a good time. In the meantime,
did you drop the email?
Yes, I did.
All right, good.
And go buy the show if you are buying outside of the United States of America. voicesofwrestling.com/fight helps give us a little bit of a kickback. And if you are buying in the States, BR Live and traditional pay-per-view are the ways to do it.
Don't forget to buy early. Don't wait till the last minute.
Yeah, my gimmick didn't work for Double or Nothing, so I had to buy it last minute, and luckily I didn't miss anything. Thank God I got lucky. But enjoy the show. We will talk to you on Monday.
Happy wrestling, everyone.
Woo.
Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragon Gate is, how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling podcasting network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragon Gate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
Hi, my name is Tyler Fornes, and I am the co-host of The Good, the Bad, and the Hungee here on the Voice of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Every week, my co-host Fred Moreland and I discuss all the happenings of All Elite Wrestling and everything going on in the universe of Tony Khan. We talk about Dynamite, we talk about Rampage, and we will talk about Collision when the time comes as well, along with all the appearances outside of AEW from all the best talents in All Elite Wrestling. This is one of the more cohesive wrestling companies in the entire world, and we discuss every intricacy about it, including the unique booking of Tony Khan that is both a huge positive and a major detriment. Check us out every single Thursday here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.